Across the drifting ice of the Arctic Ocean moves a hunter shaped by cold seas and hidden breath beneath frozen surfaces. Beneath fur that appears white lies dark skin, absorbing what little warmth the northern sun provides, while powerful limbs carry its weight across shifting floes. Dependent upon ice that forms and fractures with the passing seasons, the polar bear lives at the boundary between land and ocean, where survival is measured in patience, endurance, and the fleeting emergence of prey from the depths below. Part 1. Origins. The lineage of the polar bear traces back to a population of ancient bears that once occupied temperate regions of the northern continents, closely related to the brown bears that still roam forests, mountains, and tundra today. Over immense spans of time, certain groups of these ancestral animals moved northward, drawn by the abundance of marine life concentrated along frozen coasts. There, in landscapes shaped by glacial cycles and drifting sea ice, isolation and environmental pressure guided a gradual transformation. What began as a terrestrial bear adapted to varied climates would, over many thousands of years, become a creature whose existence was bound to the seasonal pulse of the Arctic Ocean. The emerging form encountered a world defined by cold not merely as temperature, but as a persistent ecological force. Survival required more than thick fur. Beneath the developing coat, the skin darkened to an almost black tone, an adaptation that permitted more efficient absorption of solar radiation in an environment where warmth was both scarce and fleeting. Above it, the fur evolved into a structure composed of hollow, transparent hairs that scatter visible light. Against the brightness of snow and ice, this created the familiar impression of whiteness, while simultaneously trapping insulating air close to the body. Together, these features allowed the bear to retain heat during long journeys across frozen surfaces, or while swimming through waters capable of draining warmth within moments. As generations passed, changes accumulated in bone and muscle. The skull lengthened slightly, creating a more streamlined profile for movement through water. The neck became more robust, supporting the strength required to subdue large marine prey. Limbs adapted for propulsion as much as for walking, while the paws broadened into expansive surfaces that could distribute weight across fragile ice. The pads of these paws developed countless minute papillae, tiny bumps that enhanced traction on slick surfaces and reduced the risk of sudden slips during the final stages of an approach. During this long period of northern expansion, the ancestors of the polar bear inhabited a continent where other formidable predators also moved across the Ice Age landscape. Among them was the short-faced bear, a massive relative whose towering frame and elongated limbs were suited to open terrain and cold steppe environments. Fossil evidence suggests that ranges overlapped at times, bringing these animals into indirect contact as they pursued prey across glacial margins. While one lineage would eventually disappear with the passing of the Ice Age, the other continued its gradual transition toward a life increasingly dependent on marine ecosystems. The dietary shift that accompanied this transition was profound. Though descended from omnivorous ancestors capable of consuming vegetation and small animals alike, the developing polar bear became progressively more reliant upon meat and fat derived from marine mammals. This change favored individuals capable of enduring extended fasting when hunting opportunities diminished. Over time, a metabolic flexibility emerged that allowed the body to slow internal processes during periods of scarcity, conserving stored energy until prey once again became accessible. In this evolving form, the boundaries between land mammal and marine hunter began to blur. The animals spent more time upon drifting sea ice, using it as a platform from which to hunt seals that surfaced to breathe through openings in the frozen ocean. Movement between ice floes required powerful swimming ability, and individuals capable of remaining in frigid water for extended durations enjoyed a distinct advantage. Eventually, this dependence on the marine environment would become so complete that the polar bear came to be classified among marine mammals despite its unmistakable ancestry within the bear family. Yet traces of its origins remained evident. The dark skin beneath the fur echoed that of brown bear relatives, though it now served a different purpose beneath Arctic sunlight. The powerful jaws once suited to varied diets became instruments for capturing prey that might outweigh a human many times over. The exploratory tendencies common to terrestrial bears translated into journeys measured not in meters but in kilometers across shifting ice. Through countless subtle adjustments in form and physiology, a new predator emerged from this lineage. It was not simply a northern variant of an older species, but a maritime hunter shaped by cold seas, seasonal ice, and the presence of prey hidden beneath frozen surfaces. In the silence of the Arctic, where land merges with ocean beneath a mantle of snow, the polar bear took its place as a master of a world defined by ice. Part 2. Habitats. Across the Arctic, the world of the polar bear unfolds upon a shifting foundation that is neither entirely solid nor entirely fluid. Sea ice forms the central element of this environment, freezing outward from continental coasts as temperatures fall and retreating again during warmer seasons. These frozen platforms are not static landscapes, but living structures that crack, drift, compress, and fracture under the influence of wind and ocean currents. Upon them, the maritime bear conducts the majority of its existence, using the ice not merely as a place of rest, but as a vital hunting ground from which access to prey becomes possible. In winter months, vast expanses of pack ice extend across the Arctic Ocean, linking distant shorelines and allowing individuals to travel tens of kilometers in a single day. During these periods, the boundaries between island archipelagos and continental landmasses blur beneath continuous frozen surfaces. Movement becomes easier, and bears may roam, widely in search of seal-breathing holes or resting sites. In contrast, summer brings fragmentation. Floes separate into drifting islands, forcing some bears to swim across open water for extended distances as they follow the receding ice edge. Such swims are not brief undertakings. Polar bears are capable of remaining in the water for hours or even days, maintaining steady propulsion with powerful forelimbs, while the hind limbs trail behind. Speeds of approximately 10 kilometers per hour may be sustained for limited periods, though endurance rather than velocity defines their aquatic travel. A thick layer of fat insulates the body against the thermal conductivity of seawater, while dense fur traps insulating air even when submerged. The surface of each paw spreads outward, distributing the animal's considerable mass across thin ice in a manner similar to snowshoes. This allows individuals to cross areas that might otherwise fracture beneath concentrated weight. The pads themselves are textured with small papillae that enhance grip upon slippery surfaces, reducing the risk of sudden falls during rapid movement. These adaptations permit travel across environments where footing may shift from firm ice to brittle crust within a few steps. Within this frozen seascape exist several distinct ecological regions, each defined by seasonal patterns of ice formation and melt. Some populations inhabit areas where ice remains throughout most of the year, allowing prolonged access to marine prey. Others must endure annual ice-free intervals, during which the ocean surface remains open and hunting opportunities diminish sharply. In such places, bears may retreat to land, conserving energy through reduced metabolic activity until the return of winter ice restores access to feeding grounds. Despite the severity of this environment, it offers certain advantages. The ice edge, where frozen platforms meet open water, becomes a zone of biological productivity. Here, marine mammals surface to breathe, rest, or nurse their young, creating opportunities for ambush. Snow drifts accumulate along pressure ridges, concealing the movements of approaching predators. Even the silence of the landscape aids in the final approach, as footfalls upon compacted snow produce minimal sound. Temperature extremes shape every aspect of existence in this region. Winter air may plunge far below freezing, while summer brings extended daylight that gradually weakens the ice from above. Storms sweep across the open ocean, rearranging flows and creating new leads of water through which animals must navigate. Yet within these challenges lies a rhythm to which polar bears have become attuned. The seasonal advance and retreat of sea ice dictates migration, feeding success, and reproductive timing. Individuals that occupy regions with persistent ice may remain offshore for much of the year, while those in more variable habitats experience longer fasting periods on land. Adult males, in particular, may endure months without feeding when access to seals becomes impossible. During these times, stored fat reserves sustain metabolic needs until hunting once again becomes feasible. Thus, the habitat of the polar bear cannot be understood as a fixed place, but rather as a dynamic interface between ocean and atmosphere. It is a world defined by movement, where the ground itself drifts beneath the feet of those who inhabit it. Survival depends not upon ownership of territory in the conventional sense, but upon the ability to follow ice as it forms, fractures, and reforms across the circumpolar north. Part 3. Prey. The diet of the polar bear is defined by a reliance upon marine mammals, whose lives unfold beneath the frozen surface of the Arctic Ocean. Among these, the ringed seal constitutes the primary source of nourishment for many populations across the circumpolar north. These relatively small seals maintain breathing holes within the ice, surfacing at regular intervals to replenish oxygen supplies. It is at these openings that opportunity most often arises. A bear may wait beside a seal's access point in near complete stillness, its presence concealed by snowdrift and shadow, until the moment of emergence provides a fleeting chance for capture. Bearded seals also form an important component of the dietary spectrum. Larger and more powerful than ringed seals, they offer a greater caloric reward when successfully subdued. Their size, however, presents additional challenges. A misjudged approach may result in escape, and the expenditure of energy during pursuit can be considerable. Yet where such prey are abundant, they may represent a valuable supplement to smaller species. In certain regions, harp seals may be encountered seasonally, particularly when young individuals rest upon stable ice during early stages of development. These periods of vulnerability may provide temporary increases in feeding success, allowing bears to accumulate fat reserves essential for survival during less productive months. Although seals form the overwhelming majority of the diet, polar bears are capable of pursuing larger prey when circumstances permit. Walrus calves may occasionally be taken when separated from protective groups. The defensive capabilities of adult walruses, with their tusks and formidable mass render direct attacks uncommon. A full-grown walrus may exceed the weight of the predator many times over, and attempts upon healthy adults carry substantial risk. In some areas, beluga whales become vulnerable when seasonal freeze encloses them within restricted pockets of open water surrounded by thickening ice. These temporary refuges, known as breathing leads, may attract multiple bears when escape routes diminish. Under such conditions, bears may engage in opportunistic feeding upon animals unable to break through the surrounding ice. A successful capture in these circumstances may provide sustenance sufficient to sustain an individual for extended periods. Narwhals may also be subject to similar vulnerability during sudden freeze events. When migration routes are blocked by rapidly forming ice, individuals may become confined within limited openings where access to the surface is possible. Such situations are unpredictable, yet they illustrate the range of prey species that may become available under particular environmental conditions. The availability of these prey species varies across distinct polar bear subpopulations, each occupying regions defined by seasonal patterns of ice formation and retreat. In areas where sea ice persists throughout most of the year, access to marine mammals remains comparatively stable. In contrast, populations inhabiting regions with prolonged ice-free intervals may experience extended periods during which hunting becomes impossible. During such times, individuals must rely upon fat reserves accumulated during successful hunts in earlier seasons. Despite occasional consumption of alternative food sources such as bird eggs, vegetation, or carrion when confined to land, these cannot replace the nutritional benefits derived from marine mammals. Seal blubber provides dense concentrations of fat essential for maintaining body temperature in a region where heat loss occurs rapidly. Muscle tissue may also be consumed, though the energetic economy of polar bear feeding favors the consumption of fat whenever possible. A single large feeding event may yield sufficient energy to sustain an adult bear for days or even weeks. This capacity to derive prolonged benefit from intermittent success reflects an adaptation to an environment where hunting opportunities may be unpredictable. Adult males in particular may endure months without feeding when sea ice retreats beyond accessible distance, subsisting upon stored energy until conditions permit renewed access to prey. Thus, the relationship between predator and prey is mediated by the structure of sea ice itself. Stable platforms permit stealth and approach, while fractured surfaces may hinder movement or concealment. Where ice retreats early, bears may be forced ashore, separated from the marine mammals upon which their survival depends. There, the limited availability of terrestrial food underscores the extent to which the species has become specialized for life at the interface between ocean and ice. Through this dependence upon seals and other marine mammals, the polar bear occupies a narrow ecological niche within the Arctic ecosystem. It is a hypercarnivore whose survival rests upon prey, adapted to life beneath the same frozen surface upon which it walks. In the silent exchanges between hunter and hunted, the rhythm of Arctic life continues, shaped by ice, breath, and the fleeting appearance of opportunity at the edge of a breathing hole. Part 4. The Hunt. The success of the polar bear as a predator rests not only upon strength, but upon a suite of hunting strategies and biomechanical adaptations that permit the efficient capture of prey in a landscape defined by concealment and fragility. The frozen surface of the ocean serves as both pathway and platform, allowing access to marine mammals that must surface periodically to breathe. In this environment, patience often replaces pursuit, and stillness becomes a primary tool of survival. One of the most frequently employed hunting methods involves waiting beside a seal's breathing hole. These openings, maintained by seals within the ice, represent predictable points of emergence through an otherwise impenetrable surface. A bear may remain motionless beside such a hole for extended periods, conserving energy while relying upon an acute sense of smell, capable of detecting prey beneath snow or ice from considerable distance. When the seal surfaces, a rapid downward strike of the forelimb may secure the animal before escape becomes possible. This technique requires precision rather than speed, as opportunities are brief and often separated by long intervals. At other times, seals rest upon the surface of the ice, particularly when stable floes provide temporary security from aquatic predators. In such cases, the bear may engage in a slow and deliberate approach across open ground. Movement is minimized to reduce vibration transmitted through the snow crust, and the body may be lowered to diminish its visible outline against the horizon. The broad paws, equipped with papillae that enhance traction upon slippery surfaces, allow silent advancement across compacted snow or wind-polished ice. The distribution of weight across these expansive pads functions much like snowshoes, reducing the likelihood of sudden fracture beneath concentrated mass. This permits travel across areas where thinner ice might otherwise give way. During the final moments of an approach, the bear may accelerate rapidly, relying upon powerful forelimbs to close the remaining distance before prey can reach safety. In addition to terrestrial stalking, polar bears employ strategies that take advantage of structural features within the ice. Pressure ridges formed by the compression of drifting floes create irregular terrain that may conceal an approaching predator. Snowdrifts accumulating along these ridges further obscure movement, allowing individuals to approach resting seals with reduced likelihood of detection. Aquatic hunting also plays an important role when prey is encountered in open leads of water between ice floes. Polar bears are capable swimmers, propelling themselves with powerful forelimbs while the hind limbs trail behind. The elongated skull and streamlined body profile reduce resistance during movement through water, permitting efficient travel between platforms of ice. Swimming speeds of approximately 10 kilometers per hour may be attained during short intervals, though endurance rather than velocity defines their aquatic capability. Occasionally, environmental conditions create opportunities for the capture of larger prey. When whales, such as beluga, become confined within restricted openings of water, surrounded by thickening ice, bears may gather at these sites. The presence of multiple individuals may facilitate access to prey that would otherwise remain beyond the capacity of a single hunter. Such events are rare, but may provide substantial nutritional benefit when successful, as a single large feeding event may yield sufficient energy to sustain an adult bear for extended periods. The biomechanics underlying these behaviors reflect adaptation to a medium that is neither stable land nor open sea. The forelimbs, capable of delivering forceful blows, are supported by musculature suited to both swimming and grappling. The neck provides leverage during the extraction of prey from water or snow. Even the insulating layer of fat contributes to buoyancy while swimming, reducing energetic expenditure during prolonged travel across open water. Hunting success is therefore governed by a balance between opportunity and conservation of energy. Extended fasting during ice-free intervals places importance upon the efficient use of each successful capture. A failed hunt may require additional travel in search of new opportunities, increasing the energetic demands placed upon the individual. Seasonal variation further influences hunting behavior. In regions where sea ice remains stable for much of the year, individuals may hunt continuously across extensive frozen platforms. In areas subject to prolonged summer melt, bears may be forced to rely upon stored fat reserves accumulated during earlier periods of success. Adult males in particular may endure months without feeding when access to marine mammals becomes limited. Thus, the polar bear's hunting strategies reflect an intimate relationship with the structure of its habitat. The silent wait beside a breathing hole, the cautious approach across drifting ice, and the steady propulsion through frigid water each represent responses to a world where prey is abundant, yet often concealed. Through these methods, the maritime bear maintains its place as a specialized predator within the Arctic ecosystem, dependent upon both patience and precision in a landscape defined by cold and distance. Part 5. Family life. Reproduction among polar bears unfolds according to a rhythm governed by the seasonal availability of sea ice and the energetic demands of life in a cold marine environment. Mating typically occurs during the spring months, when individuals encounter one another upon stable ice platforms that permit travel across otherwise fragmented regions. During this period, adult males may traverse considerable distances in search of receptive females, guided by scent cues that linger upon the snow and persist across shifting winds. Encounters between males competing for access to a receptive female may lead to displays of dominance that determine breeding opportunity. These interactions can involve vocalizations, physical posturing, or direct combat in which strength and endurance are tested. The successful male may remain in close proximity to the female for an extended interval, ensuring that mating occurs during the limited period of fertility. Following successful mating, the fertilized egg does not immediately implant within the uterus. Instead, a period of delayed implantation occurs, during which embryonic development is temporarily suspended. This physiological mechanism allows the timing of birth to align with environmental conditions favorable to the survival of newborn cubs. Only when the female has accumulated sufficient fat reserves during the hunting season does implantation proceed, ensuring that the energetic cost of gestation may be met without compromising maternal survival. As winter approaches, pregnant females seek suitable denning sites upon land or stable multi-year ice. These dens are often excavated within deep snowdrifts that accumulate along coastal banks, river mouths, or pressure ridges formed by the compression of drifting ice. Once inside, the female enters a period of reduced metabolic activity that may persist for several months. During this time, she neither feeds nor drinks, relying entirely upon stored fat reserves to sustain both her own metabolic needs and the growth of developing cubs. Birth occurs within the confines of the den during the darkest months of the year. At this stage, cubs are remarkably small, often weighing less than 1 kilogram. Their eyes remain closed, and their fur provides only limited insulation against the surrounding cold. Yet the warmth generated by the mother's body and the insulating properties of the snow den create a micro-environment in which survival becomes possible, even as temperatures outside remain far below freezing. Over subsequent weeks, the cubs grow rapidly, nourished by milk that contains exceptionally high fat content. This concentrated source of energy supports the development of insulating fur and the accumulation of body mass necessary for life beyond the den. Throughout this period, the mother remains without food, conserving energy while maintaining the warmth and protection required by her offspring. Emergence from the den occurs as daylight gradually returns to the Arctic landscape. At this stage, cubs accompany the mother onto the sea ice, where they begin to experience the broader environment that will define their existence. Movement is cautious at first, as the young animals lack the coordination and endurance of adults. The mother may pause frequently, allowing rest while the cubs adjust to the demands of travel across uneven surfaces and shifting flows. During the following months, the female resumes hunting activities, often accompanied by her offspring. Cubs learn through observation, watching as the mother approaches breathing holes or stalks resting seals upon the ice. Successful hunts provide nourishment not only for the mother, but also for the growing young, who gradually transition from milk to solid food as they mature. Family units typically remain together for an extended period, during which the cubs acquire the skills necessary for independent survival within a challenging and dynamic habitat. Dispersal occurs as juveniles approach maturity, leaving the maternal range to establish territories of their own within the shifting mosaic of sea ice. The demands of reproduction place considerable strain upon females, whose ability to raise offspring depends upon access to sufficient prey during the months preceding denning. Adult males do not participate in cub rearing and may pose a threat to young individuals encountered outside the protection of the mother. Consequently, the survival of cubs depends upon both maternal care and environmental conditions that permit successful hunting during critical developmental stages. Thus, the cycle of gestation, birth, and cub rearing continues within an environment defined by cold and seasonal change. Each successful generation reflects the capacity of the species to endure extended fasting, provide nourishment through concentrated milk, and guide offspring through the early stages of life upon drifting ice until independence becomes possible. Part 6. Social bonds. Social interactions among polar bears are shaped by the demands of a solitary hunting lifestyle within an environment where prey is dispersed across vast and shifting expanses of sea ice. Unlike some terrestrial carnivores that rely upon coordinated group behavior, polar bears typically occupy ranges that overlap without forming stable social units. Yet, encounters between individuals occur with some regularity, particularly in regions where prey availability draws multiple bears to the same location. Adult males may traverse extensive distances across drifting ice in search of receptive females during the breeding season. Movement is guided in part by scent, which may persist upon the snow and provide information regarding the presence and reproductive status of potential mates. When more than one male encounters a receptive female, interactions may lead to displays of dominance that determine access. These displays can involve vocalizations, physical posturing, or direct combat in which size and strength influence the outcome. Such encounters may continue for extended intervals, as competing males follow the female across the ice in an attempt to maintain proximity during the limited period of fertility. Territorial boundaries are not fixed in the conventional sense, as the substrate upon which the animals travel is itself in motion. Instead, individual ranges shift according to the formation and retreat of sea ice. Areas of overlap may develop where hunting opportunities are concentrated, such as along ice edges or in regions where marine mammals surface to breathe. In these locations, multiple bears may be present simultaneously, each pursuing prey independently while remaining aware of the presence of others. Relationships between mothers and cubs represent the most enduring social bond within the species. Following emergence from the den, cubs accompany the female as she travels across the ice in search of hunting opportunities. During this period, the young learn essential behaviors through observation and imitation. They may remain in close proximity to the mother for an extended interval, relying upon her protection as they develop the coordination required for independent movement across uneven and drifting surfaces. Sibling interactions also play a role during early development. Cubs born within the same litter may engage in play behavior that strengthens motor skills and social awareness. Such activities often involve wrestling, mock pursuit, or exploratory movement across snowdrifts and ice ridges. These interactions provide opportunities to practice movements that may later be employed during hunting or avoidance of threats, contributing to the development of balance and coordination. Encounters between unrelated individuals are often characterized by caution. Adult males in particular may pose a threat to cubs encountered outside the protection of the mother. Females with young may therefore avoid areas where the presence of large males is detected, reducing the likelihood of dangerous interactions. Movement patterns may change in response to scent cues that indicate recent passage of another individual. Communication between polar bears is conveyed through a combination of scent marking, body posture, and vocalization. Tracks impressed upon snow may reveal the recent presence of another bear, while olfactory signals left upon ice ridges or coastal terrain provide information regarding identity or reproductive status. Vocalizations may occur during mating encounters or during interactions between mothers and cubs. Temporary tolerance may arise in regions where prey becomes concentrated. For example, when multiple individuals gather near the remains of a large marine mammal, competition may determine access. Dominant bears secure the most advantageous feeding positions, while others remain at a distance until opportunity permits approach. Despite such proximity, cooperative feeding does not occur, and each individual consumes prey independently. As juveniles approach maturity, dispersal from the maternal range becomes necessary. These young individuals must navigate the same shifting environment without the guidance previously provided by the mother. The establishment of independent ranges reflects both the availability of hunting grounds and the presence of other bears occupying adjacent areas. Overlapping ranges and seasonal encounters contribute to a pattern of association suited to life in a habitat where solitude often enhances the chances of successful hunting. Yet the presence of others may influence movement decisions, particularly during the breeding season, or in areas where prey availability permits temporary aggregation. Thus, the relationships that exist among polar bears are defined less by structured social organization than by a series of interactions governed by opportunity and avoidance. The enduring bond between mother and cub, the competitive encounters between adult males, and the gradual dispersal of juveniles together form a dynamic pattern of association shaped by the movement of ice and the distribution of prey across the Arctic landscape. Part 7. Rivals. Within the Arctic ecosystem, the polar bear occupies a position near the apex of the marine food web, yet it does not exist without competition or risk. Other large predators share portions of its range, and the presence of these rivals may influence movement patterns, feeding opportunities, and the survival of young individuals. Although direct confrontation between such species remains uncommon, the indirect effects of competition for prey and space shape the daily realities of life upon sea ice. Among the most significant competitors in certain coastal regions are wolves. While wolves are primarily terrestrial hunters, their ranges may overlap with those of polar bears in areas where sea ice extends toward land or retreats seasonally, drawing bears ashore. Encounters between these predators may occur near carcasses of marine mammals or along migration routes where prey becomes accessible. In such instances, each species typically seeks to avoid direct confrontation, though Competition for limited food resources may arise when alternative prey is scarce. Brown bears also represent a potential rival in regions where their northern ranges extend toward Arctic coastlines. During ice-free periods, polar bears forced onto land may encounter these relatives within overlapping habitats. Competition may occur over carrion or terrestrial food sources, particularly where access to marine prey has been reduced by the seasonal retreat of sea ice. Although both species possess formidable strength, avoidance behavior often reduces the likelihood of physical conflict. Within the marine environment itself, the principal rival of the polar bear is the orca. These highly capable hunters may target seals, walrus calves, and young whales, thereby reducing the availability of prey upon which polar bears depend. The presence of orcas within open water may also influence the distribution and behavior of marine mammals, prompting changes in haul-out patterns or migration, routes that affect hunting success along the ice edge. Walruses, though primarily prey when young or vulnerable, may present a defensive threat when encountered in groups. Adult individuals possess considerable mass and tusks, capable of inflicting serious injury. Attempts upon healthy adults are therefore rare, and bears typically focus upon isolated calves or weakened individuals when circumstances permit. Competition may also arise among polar bears themselves. When large carcasses become available, such as those of whales trapped by seasonal ice, multiple individuals may gather at a feeding site. Dominant bears secure access to the most nutritious portions, including blubber rich in fat, while smaller or subordinate individuals remain at the periphery until opportunity permits approach. Aggressive interactions may occur if proximity increases, though such encounters are generally brief and often resolved through display rather than sustained combat. For cubs, the presence of adult males may constitute a particular danger. Infanticide has been documented under circumstances where males encounter young individuals outside the protection of the mother. Consequently, females with cubs may alter movement patterns to avoid areas where scent indicates the recent presence of a large male. Such avoidance behavior reflects the vulnerability of young individuals during early developmental stages. Environmental factors further influence interactions between predators. The formation or retreat of sea ice affects not only the distribution of polar bears, but also that of seals and other marine mammals upon which multiple species depend. As prey becomes concentrated in particular locations, temporary aggregation of predators may occur, increasing the likelihood of encounter and competition. Scavenging behavior may also bring individuals into proximity with species that would otherwise occupy separate ecological niches. The remains of a marine mammal may attract foxes, birds, and other opportunistic feeders in addition to bears. While such interactions rarely escalate into direct conflict, the presence of multiple scavengers may influence access to food resources. Despite occupying an elevated position within the Arctic food web, the polar bear must therefore navigate a landscape shared with other capable hunters. Competition for prey, avoidance of potential injury, and protection of young all contribute to the dynamic balance that characterizes interactions among species within this environment. Thus, the role of rival and competing predator extends beyond direct confrontation. It encompasses the indirect effects of shared prey, overlapping ranges, and environmental change that influence the availability of resources. Within this network of relationships, the polar bear maintains its position through strength, patience, and adaptation to a world defined by ice and the life that depends upon it. Part 8. Human history. Interactions between polar bears and humans have unfolded across centuries within the shared landscapes of the Arctic. Indigenous communities living along northern coastlines have long observed the movements of these animals, developing knowledge of their behavior that reflects generations of coexistence. Among Inuit, Inupiat, and Kalaaallit communities, the polar bear has long occupied a place not only within the physical landscape, but also within cultural belief systems. In traditional accounts, the bear was sometimes regarded as a being possessing awareness comparable to that of a human hunter. Stories describe animals capable of removing their fur and assuming human form before returning to the ice, reflecting a perceived closeness between species that shared similar methods of survival in an unforgiving environment. In these traditions, the bear's intelligence and skill as a hunter were acknowledged through customs that followed a successful hunt. Tools might be placed beside the animal or words spoken in recognition of its spirit, with the intention of maintaining balance between hunter and hunted. Such practices reflected the belief that respectful treatment of the bear would ensure continued success in future encounters, reinforcing a relationship defined not solely by predation, but by mutual presence within the Arctic world. Encounters between humans and polar bears most often occur where access to prey becomes limited. During periods when sea ice retreats beyond reachable distance, bears may be forced ashore, where alternative food sources are scarce. In such circumstances, individuals may approach coastal communities, drawn by scent or the possibility of scavenging. The energetic demands of extended fasting can increase the likelihood of exploratory behavior, particularly among young or inexperienced animals. Historical accounts from Arctic expeditions describe such encounters with varying outcomes. In some instances, bears were avoided through vigilance and deterrence. In others, direct confrontation occurred when individuals approached camps or supply caches. The formidable strength of the polar bear, combined with its capacity to travel considerable distances in search of nourishment, made these interactions unpredictable. On occasion, repeated visits by the same individual have resulted in prolonged periods during which communities were compelled to remain indoors, while attempts were made to discourage the animal from approaching dwellings. In remote settlements where access to waste or stored food becomes possible, bears may return repeatedly, circling structures or investigating entry points in search of nourishment. Such situations have been documented to persist over extended intervals, during which daily activities were restricted until the animal departed or was safely relocated. Instances in which humans were injured or killed by polar bears have often involved animals experiencing nutritional stress. The scarcity of marine prey may reduce the effectiveness of traditional hunting strategies, leading some individuals to investigate unfamiliar sources of food. Such behavior does not reflect habitual predation upon humans, but rather the opportunistic response of a predator confronting environmental constraint. The presence of cubs may also influence behavior. Females accompanied by young are capable of defensive aggression when approached, perceiving potential threat to offspring. In such situations, avoidance becomes essential for both species. In modern contexts, expanding human activity within Arctic regions has increased the likelihood of encounter. Research stations, industrial operations, and coastal infrastructure may attract bears when refuse or stored food becomes accessible. Measures designed to reduce attractants have been implemented in many locations, reflecting efforts to minimize conflict while ensuring the safety of both people and wildlife. Monitoring programs track movements across sea ice, providing information regarding habitat use and seasonal migration. Such efforts support the development of strategies intended to reduce risk in regions where human presence intersects with bear activity. Thus, the historical relationship between polar bears and humans encompasses both coexistence and occasional conflict. Encounters have been shaped by environmental conditions that influence the availability of prey and the distribution of ice. Where resources become scarce, proximity may increase, emphasizing the importance of awareness and adaptive management within shared landscapes. In this way, the interaction between species reflects a broader pattern in which environmental change alters the boundaries between habitats. The movement of ice, the distribution of prey, and the expansion of human presence together contribute to a dynamic relationship that continues to evolve across the Arctic. Part 9. Conservation. Conservation of polar bears is inseparable from the preservation of the sea ice upon which their existence depends. Across the circumpolar north, the seasonal formation and retreat of this frozen habitat governs access to prey, migration routes, and reproductive success. Where ice remains stable for extended intervals, hunting opportunities persist. Where it retreats earlier or forms later, bears may experience prolonged fasting that affects both survival and the ability of females to accumulate sufficient fat reserves for successful reproduction. In regions where ice-free seasons have lengthened, individuals may spend increasing amounts of time on land. During these intervals, access to marine mammals becomes limited, and alternative food sources such as bird eggs, vegetation, or carrion may be consumed when available. These terrestrial resources, however, cannot replace the caloric value of seal blubber, upon which the maintenance of body condition depends. As patterns of ice formation shift, the ranges of polar bears and brown bears have begun to overlap in certain northern regions. Encounters between these closely related species may occur where coastal habitats provide access to seasonal food sources. In some instances, mating between individuals of the two species has resulted in hybrid offspring, commonly referred to as pizzly or growler bears. The appearance of such hybrids reflects the biological consequences of changing habitat distribution, introducing questions regarding the long-term genetic integrity of populations adapted to distinct ecological niches. Monitoring programs conducted across Arctic territories seek to track population trends, habitat use, and seasonal migration. Information derived from satellite telemetry and field observation contributes to management strategies intended to reduce conflict between bears and human communities, while supporting the persistence of viable populations. Protected areas and regulations governing hunting practices have been implemented in many regions, reflecting efforts to balance traditional subsistence activities with conservation objectives. Indigenous knowledge continues to inform these approaches, providing insight into behavioral patterns and environmental change observed across generations. Despite such measures, the future of polar bears remains closely tied to environmental conditions beyond the influence of local management alone. The extent and duration of sea ice influence not only hunting success, but also the energetic demands placed upon individuals during periods of scarcity. Extended fasting may reduce reproductive success, affecting the survival of cubs born within maternity dens. Thus, the conservation of polar bears encompasses more than the protection of individual animals. It involves the preservation of the ecological processes that sustain marine prey populations and the frozen platforms upon which hunting occurs. Within this interconnected system, the persistence of the maritime bear reflects the capacity of Arctic ecosystems to maintain the balance between predator, prey, and the shifting boundaries of ice. In this way, the appearance of hybrid offspring, the alteration of migration routes, and the changing distribution of prey together illustrate the dynamic relationship between species and environment. The long-term survival of polar bears will depend upon the continued presence of sea ice sufficient to support the hunting strategies upon which their existence has long depended. The end.